Hi everyone, welcome to the content presentation for Unit 4, Web Literacies. And I have to say this is a topic that's near and dear to my heart. It started with my son when he was about 4 and I was watching him explore online and wondering what are the kinds of things he needs to know to be successful in his future. And this is a picture that he drew when he was younger. And that's really what got me thinking about this whole topic of web literacy. So I'm gonna delineate this from what we've been talking about before. So we have information literacy, finding, understanding, using information of all kinds, print and digital. Then we had our digital literacy, knowing how to use technology to help us get information and create or share information. This unit is going to focus on specifically reading on the web. So we're not talking about creating things, but we're talking about how to get to information on the web and how to decide if it's what we really need. So we're going to look at these questions. What are the comprehension processes we use when reading online? How are these processes similar and different than when we read print text? And how can we pass these processes on to students so they can be successful online readers? And I'm not going to be able to do that in a short presentation like this, but I hope in combination with the things that you're reading and you're looking at in this unit that you'll be able to begin to get a better understanding. The rationale for looking at this comes from the Common Core standards, and I don't expect you to read all of this right now, but look at those words in red. It's talking about needing an ability to gather, comprehend, evaluate, synthesize, and report on information. Exactly what we've been talking about in this course. Really lines up with what we've learned about information literacy. And so you can see down in the last sentence, the need to conduct research and produce and consume media is embedded in every aspect of today's curriculum. So that's really our rationale. Now, I'm going to share with you some information about a research study that I did with a colleague, and we sat down next to 5th and 6th grade students and asked them to tell us what they were thinking as they looked for an answer to the question, what is the difference between a landfill and a dump? And they shared with us what they were doing as they were reading online and what they were thinking about. And we analyzed that, and we came up with really 3 main ways reading on a website is different than reading a print book. And so I want to try to summarize those briefly for you here. So when you're reading a print text, you have to consider your prior knowledge of what the text is about and your prior knowledge of how informational text works. So you have to think about what is an index for, or what am I going to find if I go to the table of contents. Now, those things are a little bit similar to what we do when reading a website, but also different because a website functions differently. So not only do you have to think about the topic that you're reading about when you're reading on a website, you have to think about how informational text works. There's headings that you go to find key ideas. Those are still there on a website. But 2 new things that you have to consider when reading a website is the structure for website text, and that headings are usually links to something else. And then you have to be familiar with what happens if you click on those links and how that can take you closer or farther away from the information that you're looking for. The other kind of prior knowledge you need when reading web text is you need to know how search engines work. So if you type in those keywords, you're going to get some results, and how do you decide which of those results are going to be helpful? So you have this basic information needed for print text, and then think of it like adding layers on top of that for being able to understand what you're reading on web text. We also use inferential reasoning in both kinds of reading. So when reading a print text, students might make a literal interpretation, meaning they're just reading exactly what it says there in the words, or they might have to use cues in the text to help think beyond, to kind of read between the lines of what's there in the text. So we talk to kids about making inferences while they're reading to kind of fill in the gaps of what's not there. Well, you definitely have to do that also when you're reading on a website. But this time, your reasoning is a little bit different because you're not only filling in the gaps of what's there in the text, but your brain is also predicting where a link is going to take you. That's a different way of thinking than it is when you're reading a print book. And it isn't necessarily that the link is going to take you to a new place that's totally unfamiliar. So I use this term 3D space when you're reading in a website, because a link might take you down farther on the page. A link might take you to another page within a website, or a link might take you clear to another website. And so that you don't get lost or spend way too much time for looking for things, you have to make pretty good predictions of where a link is going to take you if you're going to be an effective reader on a web page. So that adds a layer of complexity. So you think of this multi-layered reading process. You have the basic foundation, like we do with print, but now we're adding these extra layers of complexity when we're reading on that website. And then the third way that reading on a website is different has to do with what we think about as our own process for reading while we're reading. Let me explain that a little bit better. So if you have students who are reading a book, and if they realize that what they're reading doesn't make sense, which they don't always realize that, right? But if they do realize that what they're reading doesn't make sense, we hope, have some things they can do to fix that. So they might go back and reread, or a reader might look at the pictures or the illustrations or the graphics, maybe look at the captions to help them figure out how to make sense of what they're reading. Now, that also happens when you're reading on a website, but reading on a website, you have the extra layer of the physical action. And what I mean by that is you have scrolling and clicking that can also be ways to help fix things if they don't make sense. So if you're reading on a website and you think, I don't really understand what this is, you might be able to click on a link and it will take you to some background information that will help you make sense. And so this term cognitive flexibility, you mentally have to be nimble when you're reading on a website, because you have to be able to predict where you're going to go if you click on that link, or even if you need to click on that link. There's so many extra things that you have to do when you're reading that web text. So in our study, we found that the most efficient readers had a plan. And they were able to mentally take themselves through this plan by setting their purpose, predicting where their choice was going to lead them, checking to see if it made sense, evaluating to see, oh, is this really what I need? And if not, they go back and they start through this plan again. So it becomes this circular path of reading on a website. And our goal then as teachers is to help students move through that circular path. You've been reading a couple of chapters from a book that I co-authored, and a new edition of that book is coming out in June. And in that book, we used this model. So you learned about the Big Six. You learned about Kolthu's guided inquiry model. And this is a model that a colleague and I have included in our book that helps explain the process of web reading. And so in this unit, we're going to focus most specifically on understanding and evaluating. And synthesizing and transforming will come up in the next unit. And I'm going to touch just a little bit on questioning, but we've already looked a little bit at questioning so far. So really when you the questions you're asking on the internet have to do with, where do I want to go next? Is this the information I need? Do I have enough information? What am I going to do with this information? And that all is guided by your inquiry question. And so your question might stem from the topic, and then your keywords could be your focus. and then that could lead to further questions. So this little flow chart might be a good guide as we help students get started in their internet inquiry. But I want to look more close. Oh, whoops, I forgot. Here's a little questioning activity that can help kids kind of get over that hurdle of generating questions for their inquiry project or project-based learning. And you can see the explanation there. It's not complicated activity, very simple, but it helps them think through what it takes to create a good question that's going to guide their web reading. Once that question is in place, we really move into this understanding of how to get to the information. So we've learned already about some good search engines to use for kids. You will be reading about those as you're reading in Chapter 6 in this unit, but we've talked about some previously in our discussion board and some of our other look at digital literacy and information literacy. And understanding those search results is huge. It's huge for moving forward. And so I'm going to recommend that you take a look at something called Google Search Education. And when we're talking about knowing how to understand search results, let's go to the experts, because I don't know about you, but Google is my go-to search engine. I think from reading the comments that you all have shared, that may be true for you too. So I'm going to take just a minute to go to this Google Search for Information, Google Search Education website and show you what Google has put together. 4 different tools for teachers to use: lesson plans, power searching, a Google a Day challenge, which is an activity you could do each day with kids to get them practicing using Google, and then live trainings. I'm going to focus on power searching. And you can click on the link for Start Now. I'm going to start with the basic power searching, not the advanced. And I want to show you what is available here. There's a series of tutorials that can help you get started on being an effective search person. So I'm just going to show you the introduction here. I love this, a short course on being a great internet searcher. I think we all could use that.
Hi, my name's Dan Russell, and I'm a research scientist for Google. One of the things I do is I help people learn how to become better searchers. My research shows me that, while Google's really easy to use, one of the things we don't do is use it to its full advantage. That's what the point of this course is really all about, how to make.
So he describes this as a course. It's really a self-paced tutorial guide, and maybe it's something that you will find useful in your own learning or using with students, and you can explore some of those links. I did put in our Canvas, Unit 4 in Canvas, I did put the link to that Google Search Education, or you can just Google it. The other aspect that we're focusing on in this unit is evaluating websites. And it's really a difficult challenge for our students because they tend to believe what they see. Kathy Schrock, an educator who has put together a fabulous collection of resources online, she uses the term critical evaluation to talk about the skills that students need to determine if websites are useful in their search. And so I've included a link to Kathy Schrock's information. She has fabulous tools. She has a lot of checklists that you can use to help kids determine if a website is effective or useful in their work, if it's accurate, if the content is relevant and up to date. And so I would strongly encourage you to look at her resources. They're very teacher friendly, and she has tons and tons of great things that hopefully you'll find something that's useful for you. I don't intend for you to look at everything she has, but you peruse it and find something that you think will make sense for your work in this module. When we're talking about evaluation, we're really thinking about how useful and how truthful the information is. And what I mean by those terms is, first of all, useful. Does this information help me answer my question? That's the usefulness. That's part of evaluating. If the information isn't going to help you get to the answer, you need to cut your losses and move on, because it's so easy to get drawn in or sucked into a website that isn't even relevant to what you're looking for, and then you've used up time and you haven't found your answer. Then the other aspect of evaluation is truthfulness, and is this information accurate? And that's a tricky one for children too, but also adults. And so maybe there's some tips that you'll learn that will help you in this area. Healthy skeptics is what we want our students to be, because there no longer is someone there to make those decisions about usefulness and truthfulness for them. It's our job to teach our students how to make those decisions themselves. And one way to do that is to share with them something called a bogus, a hoax, or a spoof website. And there's some out there. I'll show you how to find them. This is dogisland.com. You should visit it sometime. If you're a dog lover, you'll especially appreciate it, because it tells about the ways dogs are, as the website says, enjoying a better life. No humans there to keep them on a schedule, to not let them out when they want to go out. They can roam freely and have a wonderful life on their own. And you know, the website looks real. It has the date, it has a weather report, but if you dig, oh, it even has ads. But if you dig deeply, you'll see that this is a totally bogus website. It's all made up, but it's a great teaching tool for kids. And, let me back up. Phil Bradley created a list of fake websites, and I've included a link to his list in our Canvas course in Unit 4. So there's all kinds of fake websites out there. There's the Velcro plant, which we know doesn't exist, and it's really easy to trick kids because they're so gullible about what they find online. So check out his website in our unit, and the great thing about his list is that he lists the fake websites, and then he lists if they're appropriate for children. So there might be some things there for you to explore. My hope in this unit is that you're getting some of your questions answered about how we prepare students, and you're starting to think about how this information can be useful with the students that you work with on a daily basis.